Professor Mearsheimer, welcome here, my dear friend. Thank you for accommodating my schedule, as you always so kindly do. What did President Trump hope to achieve, and what, if anything, did he achieve in China last week?
Well, I think what he hoped to achieve more than anything else was to get some cooperation from the Chinese to help shut down the Iran war. He's desperate to find a solution to the Iran war. He can't seem to come up with one. And I think he was hoping that the Chinese would help him to put pressure on Iran and help us get a deal there. He did not make any progress on that front. I think the Chinese, for their part, wanted Trump to make some concessions or soften his position on Taiwan. That's the central issue for them. And that really didn't happen either. So on the Taiwan issue, the Iran issue, you didn't get much. In terms of trade, it appears that we got a few goodies involving Boeing aircraft and agricultural goods. It's hard for me to tell exactly what we got and where that all ends up. I think, if anything, what Trump would like to have had happen with regard to trade was to get China to loosen up on selling rare earths to the United States. We desperately need rare earths, and the Chinese control that market, and they're playing hardball with us in terms of giving us rare earths. And this has huge consequences, not only from an economic point of view, but from a strategic point of view, because you can't build all sorts of weapons unless you have lots of rare earths. And we're in an exposed position there. But Trump doesn't appear to have made much progress on that front either. So I don't think much happened here. I don't think any of us were expecting much to happen beforehand. There wasn't a lot of preparation. There wasn't a lot of talk about breakthroughs on the foreign policy front or on the economic front. And therefore, what happened is hardly surprising.
So, did Trump expect President Xi to put some pressure on Iran? And did he get the message that the Chinese want Iran to remain sovereign, unlike what the Israelis want, which is to turn it into Syria?
I think that Trump got the message that the Chinese are not going to bring the Iranians to their knees, that they're not going to try to bring the Iranians to their knees, that China would like, there's no question China would like that war to shut down. China benefits in some ways from the war because the United States is pinned down in this conflict. It's pinned down in the Middle East, and it has already expended and may expend even more precious munitions that therefore can't be used in East Asia to contain China. That's good from China's point of view. But I think economically, this is a potential problem of great significance for the Chinese, because if the international economy continues to head towards the cliff, or God forbid goes off the cliff, this will have hugely negative consequences for the Chinese economy. You want to remember that the Chinese economy is heavily dependent on exports. And given that they export manufactured goods all over the world, if countries around the world are in deep economic trouble and can't buy Chinese manufactured goods, that will have an obvious negative effect on the Chinese economy. So I think when you look at the bottom line, the Chinese would like to solve this war. They'd like to shut it down, but they're not in a position to do it. Trump is the only person who could really shut it down at this point by making concessions to the Iranians, which he apparently is unwilling to do.
What happens if Trump authorizes the 11 or 13 billion dollars in weapons sales to Taiwan?
Not much. I mean, what can the Chinese do? It's very important to understand that the 11 billion has already been authorized. We're now talking about another 14 billion. There's sort of two waves here. In the first wave, the $11 billion wave is taken care of, as I understand it. The $14 billion wave is still up in the air. And I think that eventually Trump will authorize that money. It will anger, maybe enrage is a better word, the Chinese. But what can they do about it? They're not going to start a war over Taiwan. And Trump will surely go to great lengths to make sure that that doesn't happen, because he has no interest in getting into a war in East Asia over Taiwan. But I think at this point in time, it's hard for me to imagine Trump backing off on Taiwan.
You know, it must be of profound significance, Taiwan, to the Chinese. President Xi, before he even introduced President Trump at their first large meeting with audiences of the Chinese and American delegations, before he even said, oh, by the way, Donald Trump is here, lectured him on Taiwan.
There's no question that Taiwan is an incredibly important issue for virtually every Chinese person. Anybody who's been to China and has talked to the Chinese, and I'm not talking just about the leadership here, I'm talking about the average Chinese person on the street, knows full well that getting Taiwan back and making it part of China is of enormous importance to them. It is sacred territory. It was originally taken by the Japanese in the War of 1894, 1895, and the Chinese want it back desperately. It also has significant strategic value for China, which of course is one of the reasons the United States does not want Taiwan to go back to China. But there's no question that this is a hot button issue for the Chinese, and that's what makes it so dangerous. I mean, it's important to understand that who controls Taiwan matters significantly for strategic reasons. But when you talk about Chinese nationalism and how the Chinese think about Taiwan in terms of it being sacred territory, you see it's a doubly dangerous situation.
How is it that the United States is a declining state and China is a rising one?
Well, it's simply because going back to the early 1990s, the American economy was far superior in strength to the Chinese economy. And we pursued from the early 1990s up until about 2017 a policy of engagement, which was designed to help China become an economic powerhouse. Both the Clinton administration and the Bush administration worked overtime to get China into the World Trade Organization in 2001. And this just fueled Chinese growth in the early 2000s. And even though we switched from this policy of engagement to a policy of containment roughly in 2017, nevertheless, the Chinese economy has continued to grow by leaps and bounds. It's truly impressive. Now, over the course of the period from the early 1990s up to the present, the United States economy has grown in impressive ways as well. But it has not grown as impressively as the Chinese economy has grown. Therefore, the Chinese have closed the gap with the United States in terms of wealth and in terms of their ability to develop sophisticated technologies. It's not like we're standing still and that we're in deep trouble because we can't compete. We can compete, but we're competing with a rising power. And that rising power, by the way, has over 4 times as many people as us. So when you hypothesize a situation where they have 4 times as many people as us, and they have a tremendous amount of wealth, and they have the ability to develop sophisticated technologies that are at least as good as ours, if not better, we're in deep trouble. And that's the situation that we're in today. We're dealing with a peer competitor like we've never seen before.
Do you think Donald Trump recognizes that?
Yes, I do. And I think that Donald Trump, to his credit, understood when he first moved into the White House in 2017 that the policy of engagement had, in effect, created a formidable adversary that we were going to have a lot of trouble dealing with over time. You want to remember, it's Trump who abandoned engagement and adopted containment as a policy. I think that was a smart thing to do. I know lots of people don't think that, but Trump was the person who did it, and he recognized that China was a looming threat. The problem with Trump is that during the rest of his first term, but especially during his second term, he has behaved on the foreign policy front in ways that have weakened our ability to contain China. As I like to say, because of the war in Iran, we're not pivoting to Asia as he once wanted to do. We're actually pivoting away from Asia so we can fight this foolish war against Iran.
Has the behavior of the Trump administration actually brought China and Russia closer to each other?
Oh, absolutely. And it started before Trump even moved into the White House in January 2017. It really goes back to the Ukraine war. That crisis, the Ukraine crisis, started in 2014. And that's when we started inadvertently pushing the Russians close to the Chinese. And then when the actual fighting broke out big time in February of 2022, that went a long way towards pushing the Russians into the arms of the Chinese. And now we have a situation, by the way, if you look at the war in Iran, where the Iranians, the Russians, and the Chinese all have a vested interest in working together against the United States. From Iran's point of view, obviously, but I think also from China's point of view and from Russia's point of view, the United States is a mortal enemy. They have to go to great lengths to make sure they don't do anything foolish. So they weaken their position vis-a-vis the United States. And that means that those three countries are coordinating with each other. I'm sure that when Putin goes to China, and I believe he's arriving today, that he and Xi will have much more cordial relations, much more friendly relations than Trump had with Xi. And I believe that both Putin and Xi will be talking about how they can work together to thwart President Trump's aggressive foreign policy toward them and toward Iran.
Has Trump found an off-ramp to the Iran war yet?
No, for sure. I mean, he was talking about restarting the bombing today. And I thought maybe yesterday that you and I would be talking about the new bombing campaign on the show. But obviously that didn't happen. He called it off, as he's done so many times before. He said that he talked to three of the key states in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia being one of them, I think the UAE and Qatar were the other two. And the three of them asked him, this is Trump's story, asked him to postpone the attack because great progress was being made in the negotiations. I think that's not true. I don't think great progress is being made. I think that Trump called off the attack, number one, because those three countries and probably a number of other countries begged him not to attack because they knew what would happen to them if the air war started again. But also because Trump understands full well that launching the bombers against Iran once again is not a war-winning strategy. We bombed Iran for 40 days, starting on February 28th and going up to April 8th. We had this 40-day campaign. We lambasted Iran with the Israelis, and it didn't work. That's why we went to the blockade. Now they've discovered the blockade's not working, and there's no hope of Iran surrendering anytime soon. So the question is, what do you do? And that's why they're thinking about going back to bombing. But bombing, again, is not going to solve the problem. So what do you do if you're Trump? There's only one thing you can do to put an end to this war, and that's to negotiate a deal with the Iranians where you may get some concessions in the end, for sure, especially on nuclear enrichment. But you're not going to get major concessions. And furthermore, it's going to be clear to almost everybody that Iran won the war. And Trump would then have to eat humble pie. And he's not up to eating humble pie at this point in time. But that's the only off-ramp here, unless he wants to just continue the status quo. But that has disastrous consequences, as does bombing Iran. So he really has no out here except to cut a deal.
The New York Times is reporting that Trump paused the strikes on Iran not for negotiations, as he claimed. It's just what you said.
Yeah.
And not because the Gulf allies requested it, but because Iran is becoming rapidly more effective at tracking U.S. air operations, improving its air defenses, and becoming too strong at detecting signs of a surprise attack. Iran has used the ceasefire to successfully dig out all bombed ballistic missile sites, making them fully operational again. Iran has also moved a large number of new mobile launchers across the entire country and adjusted tactics for any resumption of strikes, per a U.S. military official who did not want to be named. This is just what Larry Johnson said yesterday. I'm going to guess that you agree, Professor Mearsheimer.
Sure. And, Larry's well plugged in with the intelligence community. And as we all know from reading the newspapers, the intelligence community has been saying that. The major media sources have been reporting that the intelligence community has made it clear to the president that we did not do as much damage to the Iranian military in that 40-day bombing campaign. And number two, the Iranians have recovered a lot of their damaged assets. They've repaired them. And number three, you want to remember that when countries fight wars, this is true of all countries, not just Iran, but the Iranians learned. Combat is a learning process, and they've figured out all sorts of things about how to wage war against the United States and Israel more effectively. And finally, as we were talking about before, the Russians and the Chinese are helping them. It's not like the Iranians are on their own at this point. They're getting help from the Russians and the Chinese. And all of this just adds up to the fact that launching a new bombing campaign is just not going to do much for you. I do believe, however, that one interesting question that's on the table that I've been trying to find out what the answer is to, but can't, is whether or not the Saudis and the Qataris and even the Kuwaitis told us that we couldn't use their airspace. In other words, if I'm playing Saudi Arabia's hand and it looks like the United States is going to launch another bombing campaign, don't I have an interest in conveying to the Iranians that I'm not going to be part of this operation? Therefore, I don't want you, Iran, to attack me, Saudi Arabia. And that means I'm going to prohibit the United States from using my airspace to attack you. And I'm not going to let the United States use my air bases either. Now, the question is, did that happen? It is possible that it happened, because if you're playing Saudi Arabia's hand, even the United Emirates' hand, you do not want this air campaign to start up again, because it's very likely that the Iranians are going to pound your country and maybe even wreck it if they go after the desalination plants, the oil and gas infrastructure, and so forth and so on. The Iranians have a very powerful hand to play here, especially vis-a-vis the Gulf states. And the Gulf states, having seen what happened in the 40-day war, or the 40-day bombing campaign, have surely concluded that starting this back up again is not in their national interest.
Well, we know that the Saudis said you can't use our airspace, and then President Trump spoke to Mohammed bin Salman. Whether he's changed his mind publicly, privately, or not at all, as you've indicated, we don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money on that point.
Yes. Now, I don't want to steal your thunder, and I don't want you to show your cards, but if I were the moderator in that debate in Toronto tomorrow night, and you were going first, I would say, Professor Mearsheimer, why should the United States not go hunting abroad for monsters to slay?
Well, I am a firm believer that the United States should only go abroad and use military force when we are dealing with vital strategic interests. And I think that if you're interested in using the American military to do social engineering, which of course is what we have done a lot of in recent years. And here we're talking about, democracy promotion, promoting freedom and liberty around the world, and using military force for that purpose. As you and I both agree, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble, and that is not in the national interest. That's the basic argument that Steve and I will make tomorrow night. And I would imagine that the basic argument that Mike Pompeo and Victoria Nuland will make is that it is in the American national interest to seek out monsters and destroy them and make the world a safer place, not only for the United States, but for everybody else. Would imagine that their view is that we are ultimately a benign hegemon. And of course, our argument will be that we are not a benign hegemon when we do go out and slay monsters.
After the debate is over, will it be posted? Will we be able to see it?
I would imagine. I don't know for sure exactly what format that's available in, but people can watch it if they want. All they have to do is Google Munk Debate, M-U-N-K, debate, and the site will come up. And I think you have to pay $25. I'm not absolutely certain of this, but I think you have to pay $25 to watch it live over the internet. But whether they post it or when they post it, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
We don't usually cover domestic politics here. I'm not unaware of the fact that today's the primary in Kentucky. Thomas Massey, Congressman Massey, is a longtime friend of mine who's always been welcome on this show. Chris found a great clip of him last night talking about whether Thomas Massey, is anti-Semitic because he opposes genocide, and whether Mrs. Adelson is loyal to the United States or to Israel. Chris, cut number one.
Are you anti-Semitic?
They're trying to tell you that it's anti-Semitic for me to expose the fact that the Republican Jewish coalition has spent millions of dollars in this race, that a dual citizen, Miriam Adelson, who even Trump says is more loyal to Israel than the United States, has spent millions of dollars in this race. Those are mere facts. And it's
okay,
really...
But it's a yes or no. Are you anti-Semitic or not?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
I'm hell no anti-Semitic. But here's the danger that AIPAC runs. They've been too cute by a half. They've tried to get Mike Johnson, and he's willingly done this, conflate in resolutions on the House floor that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Or even worse yet, that if you don't support Benjamin Netanyahu's war in Gaza, then you're anti-Semitic. That's absolutely false, and it does Jewish Americans a big disfavor to equate the two.
What do you think?
I agree with him 100%. As somebody, who was called anti-Semitic by Abe Foxman and others on countless occasions after Steve Walt and I wrote the Israel Lobby book, I understand full well what he's talking about. We have a chapter in the book on the lobby that deals with this issue, and we call the charge of anti-Semitism the Great Silencer. And what it's designed to do is silence people, because if you call someone an anti-Semite, given the history of anti-Semitism, you're really tarring and feathering that person. I mean, nobody wants to be called an anti-Semite. But what's happened here over time is that the phrase has been used so loosely in such foolish ways that the charge has really lost its bite. To call Massey or to call me or to call you an anti-Semite is not a serious argument. None of us are anti-Semites. We're all very critical of Israel. We're critical of the genocide in Gaza. And that's supposed to make you an anti-Semite. This means that you engage in blood libels and so forth and so on. This is a crazy way to do business. And as Massey was hinting at the end of his comments, this is not going to work to the advantage of American Jews or Western Jews. It's going to backfire, if anything, because people are getting very angry about this. So not only is the charge losing its bite, it's backfiring.